Hello, it's me, it's Robin, and it's Christmas Eve, and I thought I'd do a quick video update on a couple of things that have come through the post and that I've been playing with recently. So I have those down before me, and the two things that are of interest are some Greenstuff World, here we have it, UV resin, and I've had it on my shelf actually. I say it's just arrived, but I've had it on my shelf for a while this year, and I just haven't used it yet, and I thought I'd give that a go. I have experimented just in the last week or so, and I thought give that one a try. I've also got some new models from WizKids that arrived from eBay, and these are some of these braziers, and I just wanted to show those because they're very interesting. They actually look better than I thought they would do, so I thought I'd show a close-up of those, handy for D&D gaming. So yeah, without further ado, I'll kind of zoom in onto this Greenstuff world and have a little chat about it. So here we go. Find the right button to press. Ta-da. Oh, I'm still in the frame. So yeah, this is Greenstuff World, European company. If I can get that in focus any minute now. I'm going the wrong way on the focus ring. There it is. Yeah, so Greenstuff World make a variety of different tools and bits and pieces. In fact, they make stuff for terrain modelling and miniature modelling. They make inks and a variety of other bits and pieces. But this is their UV transparent resin. And what it does is basically give you like a liquid result, and then an instant curing time, because you just zoom. Well, when I say instant, it's about 5 minutes totally, but you can do it quite quickly with the UV light itself. They come in a variety of different sizes. They do a much smaller one than this. This is quite expensive, I think around the sort of £15 mark for 100 mils of it. But I think it's going to last me a very long time because I'll be using it kind of sparingly. And then some of the things you can do with it are everything from doing your kind of little terrain pieces where you want some water in there. In fact, I've poured some in there already, but I'll show you in a minute what I'm going to plan to do with that as well, because I'm going to add some more colour into there before I pour a little bit more of this on top, and I'll show that curing live. I've also got this fountain, and this is, I think this is Zealot Miniatures in the UK, and so it's had a sort of paint job done. And it had a plastic clear section inside there. If I just tap in to zoom in a little bit, you can see inside is a kind of a plastic insert in the bottom. This has had PVA sort of drizzled in there, a gloss PVA style stuff has just been popped inside there to give it that shine. But in the bottom it does have a plastic insert. But I thought maybe I could put some of this Greenstuff UV resin in there to improve it somewhat, and then go from there. So these new things that have just arrived are braziers from the WizKids range, solid plastic, and they come pre-primed as it says on here as well. And these literally did just arrive on the doorstep today, and as you can see, although they're solid plastic, the top bit is clear. Kind of a frosted style, so that would take a nice wash or something on the top there to give it a transparency to the flame. And the two items themselves are, to do braziers, have different flame effects on each one too, which is quite a nice feature. But let's zoom into those a bit closer so you can see them. And I'll also talk about how I painted some other stuff like this that has that clear effect on it. So here we go, getting that focus again, as sharp as I can. If I take them out of this reflective thing as well, it should make them a little bit clearer. So there you go. Yes, they are just over about an inch and a bit in size. Some very nice detail along the bottom. They are, as I say, pre-primed with this sort of grey primer on the plastic. And then the top section has the fire piece in there. So I recently, if I can find it over here, I recently did these models, which are again from the same range, and they come as clear plastic Actually, I airbrushed these to give them that sort of orange glow look of fire, and then did some black painting to sort of mask out some areas of charred burning on the face and to give it sort of a distinct look. But that's the same sort of thing I'll do when I come to the top of these braziers. If I do them in a kind of an ink wash, the result will be quite interesting, I think, in terms of giving you some transparency whilst doing the bottom in a kind of a blackened, maybe a bronzy colour with a sort of blackened look to it, so it looks like some of the flame is stained with ash and smoke on there. So yeah, both two nice little pieces. So you can see in terms of scale there, that's your fire elemental. If I get a normal model, what have I got in here? I've got a kind of a druid model in there, so you can sort of see the size that the brazier would look like there, and the flame elemental too. Oops. So yeah, nice models, and great that you get two of them in the pack there too. Price wise, I can't remember. I think about £6 or something for these braziers primed. There's no price on there. Oh, they show them on the back there with a view. Let me get that shine off. But a view to seeing them with a yellow wash on there, and then someone's done a bluey tint of a wash on the other brazier to give it more of a smoky, magical smoke look. So yeah, those look nice. As I say, they won't need any water effects on them because they are flame effects. So I'll now move on to what I was going to show you, which was the Greenstuff World UV resin and what that works like. So I'll do an example on the on this small piece there. So what I'm going to do first, though, is just zoom out somewhat. And you can see inside there, I've got a couple of oak leaves, and those are from this set, which I bought years ago. Don't sneeze when these are around, by the way, because they will go everywhere. But it's a little set of wooden pre-cut tiny oak leaves, which I've used on the bases of a few models in the past. In fact, I'll show you a model base if I can just disappear over there. Here, in fact, is a model base I was doing the last couple of days. So it's like a, in fact, this is an old Games Workshop model. It's a Death Elemental, I think they called it. But you can see on there I've put a couple of the very small oak leaves. I mean, they're not very prominent, but with a bit of a tuft and everything, they look, they kind of give it that autumn feel. And you can see that's quite a sizable one of those leaves on there too. And yeah, overall nice effect. Anyway, back to doing some of this UV resin. So what I wanted to do first is just boost some colours in there before I layer on another layer of this UV resin to give it some depth. So I'm just getting some greens. I've got this other one here, Flesh even. Let me give that a try. Maybe not the Thal Thresh. Maybe I'll go with a khaki mixed into the green. So given that I've just got this handy tray around here that came with these models, you know, that's what I use these trays for all the time. So this came with those two models I was just looking at. I'm going to drop some of that paint in there with a brush. So that's a bit of a clearer view without my face in the way. So yeah, I'm just using some of the, it's called Gnarls green. It's just a sort of quite a dark green. I don't mean much because it's such a tiny little water feature. And then some of this other privateer press paint, which is called Menoth white base. I'll stick some of that in. I wonder if I need something darker actually. I'm looking at it. Yeah, that one over there, that's one of my favourite dark colours. Coal Black, which is another privateer press colour, but it's quite a dark one. I hope you got the pop of that paint opening. Yeah, coal black. It's like a black, but it's got a sort of bluey green tint to it, so I quite like that. Yeah, so the first thing is, as I said, I've put a couple of these leaves in there already, but I'm going to probably add a couple more before I finish and try not to sneeze on them, so spray them all over the place. And there's the if I can get that really sharp, you'll be able to see in detail what I did underneath the current layer of this acrylic UV resin that I put in there the other day. I did those blotches of green and darker green. So I'm just going to layer some more of those on top by simply mixing some of these paints and smearing them in there. It's going to be completely unscientific, but just sort of randomly going for it live. So why not just blending those colours together on the plastic. I think I'll go with the darker towards the edges to give it a kind of a mouldy look up around the edges of the water. Though arguably with water you're meant to go lighter towards the edge really, if you're doing, you know, in that way that deeper water gets darker and the lighter water is more sort of bluey green. I think with a small water feature like this, there's no harm in just making it a little bit more interesting and creative, and maybe putting a couple of lighter blotches in there. Might even look like a fish or something in there. I'm using a big brush as well, by the way, down there. It's not because this isn't the sort of detail level that requires super detailed control. Yeah, keeping an eye on it from a distance. Given this is still wet, I can probably blend some of the edges of it as well on there. And also go onto the edge of that leaf. Yeah, so one of those two leaves are going to get buried under this UV stuff now. Because if you've just joined the live stream and are excited to see what I'm doing, I'm going to put some of this Greenstuff World UV resin in there. I'm just going to pour it in, and it's going to act like another layer on top of what's in there at the moment to give it some more depth. So say I've got two of my little cut leaves in there already, but I shall now use this. And I don't think you need to shake it up, although, you know, just can't help shaking things up. Yeah, it has a nice little clean, easy to use funnel at the top. I think the idea with this is generally don't pour in too much, because the thicker it is, the more there is curing time. You can see it sort of goes in as a little drop. Obviously you want to make sure every area is covered, but if I start to swirl it around, it's starting to sort of spread around, almost like cracking an egg into the frying pan. You want to sort of move it around to cover every part of the surface in there. It's obviously, because it's a nice liquid like this, it's probably quite good at self-leveling. You know, you are going to get some up around the edge, like a little splashback on the edge of that water feature if you are running it up the sides. Yeah, I think that's covered everything in there now. And you can sort of see in some areas, I mean, this isn't the best of examples given it's so small, but you can see around the edge there, it does feel like it's given some of that water some depth in there. It has, of course, soaked into my existing leaves, so the leaves are sort of very barely visible in there. So next step, you get the UV torch. So here it is. So these are available from Greenstuff World as well. And I've no idea what it's going to do on the camera. Let's see. Okay, so you're getting a bit of the UV light flash back on there. It actually warms up a little. So there's some sort of chemical reaction going on as the UV hits it. And you can also use this stuff and leave it outside as well. So you don't necessarily have to have a UV torch. You could simply take it outside. Now I can smell it now as the reaction's starting to happen. It doesn't smell too bad. It doesn't smell like the sort of chemical smell you get off super glue. So just while I'm at this stage, I will pick up a couple more of these small oak leaves and drop them into the pot. When I say pot, I mean. And I noticed last time, because I did drop a couple of these in here before, that after a few moments they're just kind of stuck to the half-cured. It's tricky even with these tiny tweezers to get them. There's one other really small one in there. I'll just take that. I can't even see if that's gone in. It's gone in so invisibly on the side at the back there. Has to be. There you go. I think it's probably enough. Don't want to like fill it full of leaves. And back on with this UV light. Yeah, see, it's got the logo on there, Greenstuff World as well. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. And yes, this was the actual UV resin stuff. Don't want to put that too much in the UV light in case I start to, well, that's blacked out in there. Don't want to start curing the stuff while it's still in the bottle. I mean, I can see now that when I'm doing this sort of sideways turn on that there is no movement anymore. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I think it says something like 2 day, well, no, several hour curing time if you leave it out in the sun. Direct sunlight. Oh, it does say in direct sunlight or in UV light, just 3 or 4 minutes. So I think I'm near that now in terms of this. Well, I could accurately monitor my timing. That'll do though. So there we go. Let's zoom in again and have another close-up on the actual pot. Yeah, I think it's a reasonable result. I think I could have made some areas more dark in there. and they are pretty much just stuck on the surface, a couple of those leaves, although as you can see the ones underneath have sort of browned out because they've absorbed some of the liquid in the process of being poured on them. And the other ones in there, I mean, they are pretty much, because I put them in as it was half cured, they are pretty much glued on the surface in terms of being permanent. What you don't want to do is now obviously dull coat any of this, so don't spray. And of course this had already had a matte dull coat on the stonework on there, so it's a case of not spraying now, because if you did a matte spray on there, obviously you just ruin that gloss, and it's the gloss that you want to keep. One thing I found with these, just as a tip, because I've used liquid water over the years, is that it doesn't like dust, because there's, for some reason, even when this was cured after about 4 or 5 days, I stuck my finger on it and it was slightly tacky. And the result will be, if you leave it outside, as in not in a cabinet or in a box, and any dust starts to fall on there, that dust will just stick if it stays slightly tacky. So yeah, I think that's had enough UV light. So I've got another few minutes, so why not pour some in here as well for fun? So that one's now done. I'll get my stuff out again, just zoom out and show you what's going on the workbench. Yeah, so I'm going to dump some more of this UV resin inside this fountain piece. I think there's a kind of an edge that it might fall off in there, but it should go in okay. Since I've got some of this paint already to hand, I'm probably just going to darken a couple of bits inside there to make it look a little bit more dark and grimy or messed up inside before the before the UV liquid water goes in. And again underneath, particularly where this disappears up underneath the base here, which is a section you can't see that I'm painting. And then just along the edge, just to darken the very edge of the plastic insert that's in the bottom in there. I'll probably zoom in so you can see that a bit better. Yeah, that's more like it. So there we go. I've just seen a couple of other areas that could probably just do with a smear. In fact, what I can see down there are glue underneath this plastic insert that's in the bottom section. I can see glue smears through the whatever piece of acrylic that's in there. So that's just darkening it off a little bit to break up those smears. Right, that's it. Oh, and the other thing is you can, I've seen on YouTube that people do mix in inks and other acrylic paints into this, and it still cures off okay. So the fact that this paint that's in there is a wee bit damp isn't the end of the world. So I think what I'll do is I'll pour bottom first. I mean, if I was doing this really cleverly, I would do the bottom, cure it, finish it, and then move on to the top. to prevent any splashover. Although splashover is not going to be the end of the world because it's a fountain. It should really have some water going over the edges of the different layers anyway. You can see as I'm dropping it in, it's just forming small puddles that I can then join up. Or will start to join up naturally together anyway. Yeah, so then move on to the next layer. Yeah, it's quite, because it's quite sticky stuff, it has quite a strong surface tension, which is kind of not always a good thing because you want it to join together rather than just form lots of different goblets in there. Okay, so I can see some areas I think that maybe down there could do with a bit more. So there we go. So, well, what I was sort of saying to myself is that I'd like to live see some of that water come down over the edge. I think that might be difficult to cure while it's dripping down. Why not try it though? You know, stick the UV light on and then do a kind of a small drop over the edge. Oh, that cures quick. Wow. That cured into a blob on the end of the thing, on the end of the nozzle. Oh, now that's a problem. It goes underneath. Oh well, it just looks like a huge drop underneath, unfortunately. Maybe I can tease it. No, that's gone solid now. Yeah, I might try that. I'm going to tease it in a moment. I'm going to let this cure just a little bit longer. And see, actually, annoyingly, I've got a drop on the side and a bubble down there. It's not too visible. Yeah, that's curing well now. So if I turn that off, if I put another bit on that same drop area there, and instead of letting it go underneath, try and tease that back. No, that's going to be really hard. Yeah, I was hoping for that. You know, that way that you kind of would see it drip down. I think the only way to make those is to make them on a separate sheet. I wonder how easy that would be on this kind of plastic tray I've got here to sort of make a thin strip. Let's see this in action, given I've never done this before. But if I can make long strips in there, a bit like a fountain stream of water before it cures, and then have a look what it looks like. Oh, sorry about that, sort of flashing the light in your face. I don't know if even I'm going to be able to get it out. It'll probably bond on this stuff and I'll never get it out again. hopefully that's cured that in the tray there enough, while still providing some curing down to what's on the miniature below. Okay, what's it going to be like now? Oh. Possible to get it off? Oh yeah, I can feel it's gone hard on there. Somewhat difficult to get underneath it. Ah, aha. Ooh, that's coming off a treat. I reckon if you spent some more time on it rather than the rush job I'm doing here, you know, I've already got a sort of water sheet thing going on there. So I'm going to glue it on there with the UV stuff. So get a knife, pop it down there, zoom in so you can see the action. So there's the plastic I've just made using the UV resin. When I say plastic, I mean a little stream of water. So if I cut that now, about here, I guess. And I can hide my errors. In other words, that big blob that's hanging underneath there. And by doing that, I'll just simply, I even say to do that, I'll just simply put a little tiny smear on the end to glue onto, pick up this beastie very rapidly, put it on the side there, push it in like a sheet of water, try and get it in focus so you can see what the hell's going on. It's leaned in a bit. Corrective action needed. UV, quick. It's got a bit of a lean in on it, but then water tends to do that, doesn't it? It kind of drools underneath. Yeah, I mean, this is doing it quick, isn't it, on live, rather than actually doing any preparation, but you can see the sort of effect it's going for there, sort of frozen, not frozen water, but running water even. My only issue is I put so much of a blob underneath there before, but that is completely locked on now. So it really does bond well to each other as well, in terms of if you are gluing parts onto another section. Yeah, so, you know, I'm quite pleased with that result, really. And here's the other little one as well. The tray here, you could cut that as well. You know, you could sculpt it in the sense that you could slice thinner pieces off to then glue it on. So you don't have to just rely on making the perfect piece from shredding it up. That's it. Well, that's been my... Given how small these little items are, and that if you're not in the business of doing a huge terrain section where you're making a river or something, you're just doing spot details, like you could do drool coming out of a monster's fangs or something, you wouldn't need very much of this. You could get away with a smaller tub. I've got lots of ideas for usage on things like water features like this, so I bought the bigger one because I knew I'd get through it, but you could do with the smaller effect as well. Right, back to me then. That's me on that one. So thanks very much for listening in. This has just been a quick Rotten Lead. It's Christmas Eve, so if you're enjoying the holidays, have a good time. Best wishes to the D&D with Minis group, where I've posted this today, and please feedback and put comments on, because then I can correct my ways, or suggestions are always welcome. So thanks very much for listening in. I'm now going to stop the stream and enjoy my Christmas Eve. Bye.